about here, about channel utilization. We said that we miss so many chances to utilize the channel, and we just wait for only one packet to be delivered, and that really reduces the channel utilization drastically. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So last time we started to talk about transport layer protocol. We talked about the basic features for transport layer protocol, including multiplexing and demultiplexing, and we said that this is the minimum functionality in any transport layer protocol. We also started to talk about the principles of providing reliable data transfer. So we tried to go gradually from assuming that the channel is perfect and it doesn't have any errors, in which case the transport layer protocol doesn't have to account for much. It assumes that everything is perfect under the transport layer. Therefore, there's nothing to be done except multiplexing and demultiplexing. That's it. And we moved forward until we reached to stop and wait. Stop and wait protocol assumes that we send one packet and we have to account for acknowledgement. So this packet might be corrupted and it might be completely lost. The acknowledgement might be corrupted, the acknowledgement might be lost, in which case we have to account for all these events. And we said that if the packet might be completely lost, in that case, we need the concept of a timeout, because we cannot wait forever for the packet or the acknowledgement to be delivered, in which case we have to wait for a certain period of time, and then we assume that it was lost, even if it was not, even if it was delayed or something. So the problem with the stop and wait was what? The main problem for stop and wait, there was a big issue in stop and wait. The what?
We don't transmit just once and we wait for replies.
Right. So what is that cause? What is the problem? Utilization, channel utilization. So we talked last. That was the main motivation towards what we start to talk about today, which is pipelined protocol. With pipelined protocol, I don't have to just wait for the acknowledgement for one single bit. I don't have to wait for the acknowledgement. So I can just send the segments without having to wait for the acknowledgement. But of course, I cannot just send everything, because that will also cause the channel to be overwhelmed by the other scenario. And instead of just utilizing the channel inefficiently, we can overwhelm the channel with lots of segments, and in that case we cause traffic jams and so on and so forth. So that's why we came up with the concept of window. So that's why it's called a go back in. So go back in means that I can send up to n segments without having to wait. But in that case, any of these segments might be delivered successfully, or it might be lost, or it might be corrupted. Okay? So in that case, we also need a timeout. But the thing is, here, the timeout, I just need to have one timeout for all the n segments, as we will see. Also, that turns to have a very good advantage when it comes to receiver sends cumulative acknowledgement. What that means is, as we will see in a minute, even if one acknowledgement from the receiver was lost, okay, assume that the sender here sends one segment 0, for example, send it to the receiver. So receiver received 0, okay, and then 1, and here it's received 1. So here, the sender needs the acknowledgement in order to continue sending, right? So the receiver will send the acknowledgement for segment 0. This acknowledgement is lost, okay? Does this cause the sender to stop sending? No, because it can send up to n segment, right? The receiver received segment 1, and it sends acknowledgement for 1. This acknowledgement was delivered successfully to the sender. So what does that tell you? This tells you that everything before that was also delivered successfully. So, which means that this acknowledgement supersedes this acknowledgement. That's why it's called cumulative acknowledgement. So even if one of the acknowledgement was lost, the work will move on. There will be no effect, zero effect, which is also a nice feature. That's good, right? That's also a nice feature. This would mean that there is no effect of 1 or 2 lost acknowledgements on the channel utilization. The transmission will continue. That's nice. The sender also has a timer for the oldest unacknowledgement packet. And what that means is when I start sending segment 0, I will start firing a timeout. Okay? When I start sending segment 1 right away after this, I don't have to start another timer anymore. Why? Because I'm just waiting for one acknowledgement. When I receive that acknowledgement, we will see now, we will have to slide a window, and then I can start another timer, which means that I can only have one timer at a time. So I only need one timer. Why is this? Because very important assumption in go back n is that you can send n segments, but the receiver has to receive them in order. This is a very, very, very important condition, which means if I receive 0, 1, and then 3, okay, will the receiver accept segment number 3? No. Why? Because segment 3 is not in order. This is a very, very important condition, which is the main difference between go back n and selective repeat. This is very important condition here. So the receiver assumes that segments have to arrive in order. So can I have the scenario that I receive 1 and then 3? Yes, because segment 2 is lost on the channel, and that might happen, right? But the receiver will not accept segment 3, will not accept segment 4 until it receives segment 2, okay? So the receiver is expecting one segment at a time to arrive in order. And it has to receive this segment before expecting the next one. Okay? So the sender sends up to n segments, but the receiver receives one by one in order. Okay? The selective repeat relaxes this assumption. Relaxes this assumption. So if you receive 0, 1, and then 3, it will accept segment 3. Okay? And then 4, it will accept segment 4. Okay? But as we will see in a minute, this really complicates. It has nice advantage, but it complicates the protocol significantly. Okay? So for go back n, I can send up to n segments. Receiver has to receive them in order. If any of them is missing, the receiver will stop. Okay? Will send the last segment that was received successfully and will wait for the next one. I cannot expect any segment to come until I receive everything before it. This is very, very important. Okay? But selective repeat relaxes this assumption. So we'll see the implications of this assumption on the complexity of the implementation between go back n and selective repeat. So here, sender has one timer. Okay? Here, the receiver, the difference بقى هنا, the receiver هنا sends individual acknowledgement, not cumulative. So if the sender receives acknowledgement 2 the sender should not assume that segment 1 arrived successfully at the receiver. Why? Because of what you just said. The receiver might actually accept segment 3 before it receives segment 2. So if the receiver receives segment 3 and accepts it, it would send a acknowledgement 3. But that doesn't mean that segment 2 has arrived successfully. So in selective repeat, we cannot assume that acknowledgement is cumulative. Why? Because the reception might be unordered.
When the sender receives 3 but has not received 2.
Acknowledgement. You talk about the acknowledgement.
Yes.
Okay,
What
yeah.
will it do?
When it receives 3 but not 2, it will not do anything. It will not do anything. Because for the sender, maybe I will receive acknowledgement 2 later. I don't know.
What will do in this case?
It will have to wait for the timeout.
Oh, okay, so we depend on timeout.
Yes. And that's another, this is a good question because that's another complexity. Ba. For selective repeat, I cannot just have one timer for the entire window in that case. Each segment will have its own timer. That's here. The sender maintains timer for each unacknowledgement packet or segment. Okay? Because of this. Okay? So I can receive acknowledgement 3 and not receive acknowledgement 2, right? So will I wait forever? No, but I'm waiting for acknowledgement 2. So I have a timer for 2, I have a timer for 3, I have a timer for 4. That's another level of complexity now. So acknowledgement is not cumulative, it's individual. Timer is not, again, per window. It's not one timer per window, it's a one timer per segment. واضح الفرق؟ That's in a high level, but we'll dig into these two techniques in more detail. So let's start with go back N. For go back N, we said the fundamental assumption is that the receiver assumes that segments arrive in order. And if they are not, it will stop, it will panic and wait for the ordered segments until they arrive. So in that case, the sender uses the concept of a window. Okay? This window, this is the window, okay? The window divides the transmission of all the segments into 4 different categories of segments. Okay? So these segments, remember, these segments are coming from the application layer. The application layer gives me a huge data unit, let's say like a video file. I break them down into segments, right? This is segmentation. And then I put the segments in the buffer. The window starts from 0, and then it keeps moving. Okay? So the general situation is that I have a situation like this where the window has before it, these are segments that have been sent to the receiver. The receiver acknowledged these segments successfully. So my job is done regarding these segments. خلاص. And that's why they are outside the window. They are on the left-hand side of the window. واضح? So these are done. خلاص. I should forget them. Okay? Inside the window بقى, there are 2 categories. I have segments that have been transmitted to the receiver, but I have not received any acknowledgement regarding these segments. خالص. Okay? But I can send. I can continue sending even though I did not receive an acknowledgement. واضح? Okay. But up to what? I can send this segment, I can send this one, I can keep sending as long as I did not hit the other side of the window. So these segments, I can send, but I did not send just yet. And therefore, they have not been acknowledged. Okay? The segments on the right-hand side of the window, these are, I cannot send. These segments, I cannot even send. So if I hit this boundary, okay, and I did not receive any acknowledgement, I'll stop. I'll stop. I cannot send these. Okay? When do I send these? When I start to receive at least one acknowledgement. Acknowledgement for this segment, or maybe if it's lost, for this segment, or for this segment. When I do this, this means that everything before this have been received successfully. So what do? I do the concept of sliding the window. I will slide the window. Okay? So in order to facilitate this window technique, I have 2 pointers. I've seen pointers? I have 2 pointers. One is the send base, which always points at the beginning of the window. So when the base is incremented, okay, this technically means what? I'm sliding the window. Okay? And one points to the segment that I'm sending next. And this segment is inside the window. Okay, so I can send, but I will send now. Okay? So these 2 pointers maintain the window. Okay? So that's the technique. So now the acknowledgement has to have the sequence number of the segment that it acknowledges. And the timer is 1 timer. So when I start sending this segment, the first one in the window, I'll start the timer to wait for at least 1 acknowledgement. When I receive an acknowledgement, I slide the window and then I start the timer again. So at any point of time, it's only 1 timer fired. At all times, 1 timer only fired. I can only stop, start, restart, but it's 1 timer. واضح? Why is it 1 timer? Because of the fact that, because of the assumption that we just made at the beginning, that the receiver always receives these segments in order. If it receives anything out of order, it will not accept it. That also, we will see in a minute, that also simplifies very much the design of the receiver, because the receiver always waits for 1 segment only. Anything else, it will not accept it. Okay so far? So this is the finite state machine for that sender design. So for the finite state machine, remember, just to visualize, this is the transport layer protocol, which implements this go back N. In order to visualize and make it easy for you to implement this, you have to ask yourself what kind of events I have to process. Okay, this will help you really provide the logic for each of these events. These events are the most important thing. So for any transport layer protocol, it receives what? It receives a request to send from the application layer. That's an event. It might come at any point of time. صح? It receives acknowledgement from the network layer, right? So these two events are very crucial. Okay, what else? We have an internal event that happens inside the hold time. Exactly. So this is the timeout. This is the timeout. So these are the 3 events. So I have to use these 3 events, and I have to handle each one and all the variations around it. For example, I can get request to send, I can get acknowledgement, but the acknowledgement is corrupted. صح? I can get acknowledgement and the acknowledgement is not corrupted. صح? The request to send is request to send. It's just one case. The timeout also. When the timeout happens, what do you do? So you have to address each of these cases in this finite state machine. So So this is the design. And as we said before, you have multiple ways to design this finite state machine. For example, I can split this state into multiple states, similar to what we have done before for stop and wait. Stop and wait had actually 4 states, if you remember, right? But that was because of the fact that we only had 2 sequence numbers, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. صح? But here, we cannot have 2 sequence numbers only because we're sending n segments. صح? We can send segment 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to n minus 1. So how many sequence numbers do you think I should have?
Depends on n. Number of bits enough.
Depends on n. أيوة ها?
The window size.
2 to the power.
لا 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 لا.
Window size. Window size.
n. لا هو n plus 1. Why? Last time, stop and wait can be considered a special case of go back n where the window is 1, صح? Okay? When the window was 1, we had 2 sequence number, right? 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, صح? So here, using the same concept, when the number of segments are n, I need n plus 1. Why?
So we don't confuse with the last.
Exactly, because at the worst case, you start sending all the n, right? And the receiver has already one acknowledgement to send, okay, which is the one that it has in the buffer. And there are n packets. So to distinguish between the one that the receiver has and all these n segments, you need n plus 1. That's what we did last time, right? So the worst case is that the receiver has a segment, and I'm sending the segment. The sender did not receive the acknowledgement, so it sent the same segment again. So I need to distinguish between, is this a different segment or the same segment? So I only needed 2 sequence number. Here, I need to distinguish this segment in all the n segments. So the worst case, I need n plus 1. That's another complexity compared to selective repeat, as we will see in a minute. Selective repeat needs even more than this. We'll talk about this. طيب. So here, I cannot have n plus 1 times 2 states, as you can imagine. So I cannot do this. This would be very, very complicated. So to simplify things, I can just use one state and just have if statements here. Okay? طيب. If you see phi like this means that this is initialization. So for initialization, I start with the window starting from segment 1, and the next sequence number starts from the same segment. This means what? This means I have many segments in the buffer. Okay? I'm just initializing things. So the base is here, and the next sequence number is also here. So this is the beginning. This is the initialization, right? So this is a clear start. Okay? So when I start to transmit, the next sequence number will keep moving, incrementing, but the base will stay the same until I receive acknowledgement. بالظبط كده. So only when I receive acknowledgement, I move the base. So this is the mechanism, right? How do we do this? So here I did the initialization. Okay. So you have a request to send from the application. This is an event coming from the application, which is a request to send. Okay. So now what do? I need to distinguish between 2 cases now. Is the next sequence number at the boundary of the window, which means that the next segment will be outside the window, or is it inside the window? Because if it's outside the window, I cannot send anymore. صح? I cannot send anything. So what do I do with that event? I will not do anything. Refuse data وخلاص. I will not send it now. Okay? Only if it's inside the window, I will send back. I can send now. Okay? So send by a make packet. Make packet means what? Add the header to the content. Okay? And then بقى put the header fields ظبط الدنيا يعني before you transmit. Put the sequence number, put the data, put the checksum for error, for any checking errors or something. The checksum here is how I detect whether the packet is corrupted or not. For error checking only. ماشي? And then I send. And then I say back. Now, this part here, tries to evaluate whether I should start a new timer or not. When do I start the timer? If I am at the beginning of the window, because we said it's the timer is fired only once at the beginning. So if the base equals the next sequence number, then and only then you start the timer. Otherwise, I don't do anything. خلاص. Next sequence number incremented. خلاص. That's it. ماشي كده؟ طيب. The other event is coming from the network layer. I received an acknowledgement. That has two possibilities now. The acknowledgement is received and it's not corrupted, which means that it's good. That's a very important event. Why? Because now when I receive an acknowledgement, there is a possibility that I can slide the window back. Okay? So if it's not corrupted, then the base will have to be incremented, right? So this is sliding the window up. So now I can slide the window. And if base equals to next sequence number, this is the condition by which that we have to stop the timer. هتقول لي الله ما انت بتقول لي المفروض نستart the timer. When do we start the timer? When we receive a packet, when we receive a segment from the application layer. But here, if I slide the window and I find that the base equals to the next sequence number, I should stop the current timer, okay? Because it will start here. واضح? So when do I start the timer? When the base equals to the next sequence number and I receive a new segment from the application layer. But here we talk about the fact that there is nothing in the buffer to send. خالص. The application did not send me any segment. Okay? So the window has nothing, and the application did not send me any segment. Okay, so stop the timer and stay idle until I receive anything otherwise. Otherwise, I should start the timer. Type here, if the base is not equal to the next sequence number, why do I have to start the timer? This is actually, this should be, for accuracy, this should be restart timer. Because if the base is not equal to the next sequence number, this means that there was a timer أصلا. Okay? But here I should just restart it. Which means if I'm in a situation, if I'm in a situation now, the next sequence number is here, okay, and the base is here, okay, and I received an acknowledgement. So this base will slide, will go here, okay? So there are still some segments. It's not that the window is empty. No, there are some segments, okay? From here to here, there was a timer. Let's say the timer started with a time of 2 milliseconds. It will start counting down, okay? So now when I slide the window, if I keep the same timer again, it will fire up earlier, okay? So what do I do now? When I restart it, it will restart from 2 milliseconds again. And that's what should happen. Because I'm receiving an acknowledgement, okay? So I should not expect to receive 2 acknowledgements in the same timeout. So I should restart the timer. So I restart the timer for another 2 milliseconds again. If I receive another acknowledgement, I will restart the timer. It's the same timer, huh? But I'm just setting it to 2 milliseconds again. Okay? So it counts down. As long as I'm receiving an acknowledgement, okay, so make it 2 milliseconds. Before the 2 milliseconds, I received another acknowledgement, make it 2 milliseconds. Okay? That's logical, صح? So for accuracy, this should be called actually restart timer, not start timer. Start timer assumes that there was no timer. Actually here, in this case, there is a timer. It's just that I'm resetting the timer back to 2 milliseconds. واضح؟ طيب. If the acknowledgement is corrupted, what do I do here? Notice, nothing. I did nothing. Okay? If the acknowledgement coming corrupted, I do nothing. Why? Remember, for stop and wait, if I receive corrupted acknowledgement, what do? We either send negative acknowledgement or send positive acknowledgement for the segment before. Okay? Why didn't I do this here? Because I don't know this acknowledgement is for which segment. I don't know whether it's for 1, for 2, for 3, for 4, for 5. Okay? I don't know. And maybe after 2-3 nanoseconds, I receive acknowledgement and it's not corrupted, which supersedes this one. خلاص. صح? So just the fact that I receive a corrupted acknowledgement, it doesn't mean that there is something wrong. Okay? So maybe after 2 milliseconds or 1 millisecond, I will receive another acknowledgement. So let's say the sequence number in this acknowledgement was 2. I don't know. I cannot read it. صح? I didn't know. But after 2 milliseconds, I received acknowledgement 3. So this will get you here, okay? And everything is fine. صح? So losing or corrupted acknowledgement 2 did nothing, no effect for me. I don't have to do anything. Okay? So where is the main disadvantage, the major disadvantage for go back in? Because until now we're talking about very nice advantages, صح? So, and if it's very powerful like this, why do I need to do a selective repeat أصلا? This is where this is where the disadvantage happens. When the timer fires up, this means that either I did not receive an acknowledgement or I received a negative acknowledgement, صح? And this means what? Like when the timer fires up, what is the assumption here? Which segment has been lost? I don't know. I cannot tell. صح? So the only way for me is just to, because again, we assume that, just to make it very, very clear, maybe there is segment 0 was received and segment 1 was received, but segment 2 was not received at the receiver, and I did not receive any acknowledgement for any of them. Can this situation happen? Yes, of course. So not receiving the acknowledgement on time might mean that any of the packets, any of the segments in the window might be lost, or the acknowledgement was delayed for a very long time for some weird reason. So there are so many things that might have happened, but I don't know, right? So the only way for me is just to do what? Retransmit everything in the window. Why? Because I have to make sure that the receiver receives them in order. And if that situation happens again, and the acknowledgement was delayed, the acknowledgement was lost, segment was lost, and the timer fires up, I have to send everything in the window. I have no other way. Why? Because the receiver has to receive them in this order. Okay? So this is the disadvantage. Why is this a disadvantage بقى؟ ليه؟
If I have a large window, I will retransmit some.
You can potentially retransmit 100 segments, صح? And maybe 99 out of these 100 arrived successfully. Okay? It's just that one in the middle was lost. Okay? So this is a huge overhead on that channel. So you are trying to increase the channel utilization, but because of this event, small event, it makes you retransmit many of these segments unnecessarily. واضح? So we have to go to all the segments and start another timer, as if I'm starting fresh in this window. Even though maybe 99% of this window have been received successfully. But I don't know. واضح الموضوع؟ واضح في أي okay? So that's the logic. In order to so this is the receiver. The receiver has one event, which is receiving a segment, صح? It doesn't have a timeout طبعا. Okay? Receiving an event. But there are some cases here. I received an event and the sequence number, I received an event and I received the segment and the segment is corrupted. Okay? Or I received an event and a segment and the segment was not corrupted,
Out of order.
but it's out of order. Okay? Or I received a segment not corrupted and in order. This is the happy path back. Okay? So this is that condition. I received a segment not corrupted, and the sequence number is really what I'm expecting, which means that I'm getting things in order, which is what I want. Okay? So in that case, I extract. Extract هنا opposite to make. Extract will extract the header from the segment, throw that away, right, and get the content, and then it delivers the content up to the application. Okay? And then sends the acknowledgement. That's it. And then it increments the expected sequence number. So this one was delivered successfully, go to next. If there is anything else, otherwise, خلاص. No, I have to. That's a good thing, So I can do nothing, صح? Logically. Or what did we do for stop and wait? We either send negative acknowledgement or we send acknowledgement for the last successfully received segment. Okay? So here we select to send a positive acknowledgement for the last successfully received segment. That's again to avoid sending negative acknowledgement. واضح? So that's the logic. So this is the timing diagram for this. That's possibly easier to visualize تفضل.
When we are avoiding sending a negative acknowledgement, is it for unifying the acknowledgement so I don't have to process what acknowledgement?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
That's the point.
Yeah, this is a good simplification to the receiver design. So instead of having another type of segment in the protocol, we use this trick. So instead of sending negative acknowledgement, okay, instead of telling you this, I tell you, no. What did you say? Or I got until this. What are you trying to say next? Something like that, okay. So this is trying to simplify the design at the receiver. Okay. So this is the timing diagram. The sender sends packet 0, and it doesn't have to wait. This is the main difference, in stop and wait. We send segment 0, and then we have to wait for an acknowledgement before doing anything else. No, here we can send segment 0, we can send segment 1, we can send segment 2, when segment 3, we can do all of this. Okay? We don't know what's n here. Could be 3, could be 4. So I sent segment 0, segment 1, segment 2, segment 3. Segment 2 was lost. It happens to get lost. Why? Because the channel is can lose the segment. Okay? So there is a small blank time here, which might indicate that the window size is 4. So after 3, I cannot send anymore. Okay? So I have to wait, which suggests that the window here is might be 4. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Okay? After some time, I received an acknowledgement. Right? So what could have happened here? Maybe the timeout fires here. So this timeout fires here. Okay? But it happens here that the timeout is a little bit longer. So that did not happen. Okay? And I waited for a little bit longer. And we'll tell you what is the advantage and disadvantage of this. Timeout is one of the most critical parameter in these techniques. Type. I received acknowledgement 0 before the timeout expires, which is good. Okay? So here, what did I do? The sender will slide the window. The sender can now send by packet 4, can send packet 5, and it received acknowledgement 1, so I send packet 5, I send packet 6, I can keep transmitting. Okay? So this way I can do the pipelining. However, because the receiver here received segment 3 before segment 2, okay? So here I cannot accept it. As we said, صح? So the receiver cannot accept segment 3 before segment 2. So what does it do? It has to send acknowledgement. What is the sequence number in this acknowledgement? What is A? 1, bravo عليك. The sequence number here is 1, which is this. This is the last successfully received segment. Okay? Because I did not receive. So this segment here was rejected, discard, and the acknowledgement is 1. واضحة دي ليه؟ Okay? So when I receive acknowledgement 0, I would start sending segment 4. Send segment 4. برضو this one discard. Because I'm expecting 2. خلاص, I will keep insisting that I have to receive segment 2. What is the acknowledgement here? Also 1. Received segment 5. Also 1. Okay? So the only bad thing that will break this loop is a timeout. Bravo عليك. Timeout. Okay? So here, the timeout, remember I received how many acknowledgements? 2, which means that, okay, I slid the window 2 positions. صح? So I can start from segment A, segment 2. Okay? So I can send back segment 2, segment 3, segment 4, back to back. خلاص. Okay? So the overhead here is that segment 3 has been sent before, segment 4 has been sent before, segment 5 has been sent before, and they arrived successfully. So the receiver needs to distinguish between all of these. That's why we need n+1 sequence numbers. واضح? Okay, so this is the timing diagram that illustrates n. طيب. The main problem هي موضوع retransmitting the entire window. Retransmitting the entire window, their main reason for it is the fact that the receiver, if it receives unordered segment, it will not accept it. So what if it does?
Selective.
What if it does? In that case, technically, the receiver will have a window that corresponds to the sender window. The window at the receiver is used for all the segments that I can accept. Okay? So the window at the receiver has a slightly different purpose. The window at the receiver means which segments I can accept even if they are not in order. Okay? So we'll see the implication of this. So receiver individually acknowledges all correctly received packets, which means that if I receive 2 and then receive 4, I will send acknowledgement 2 and then send acknowledgement 4. I will not send acknowledgement 3 because I did not receive it. Okay? And the sender has to fire up timer for each of these segments separately. When it receives the segment, when it receives, acknowledgement, it stops the timer for this particular segment. Okay? Type. Sender only resends packets for which acknowledgement not received. أو ده بعد timeout. After the timeout. Okay? So the complexity here is that the sender has to maintain individual timers for each segment. The sequence numbers, how many sequence numbers do you think I should have here? Not anymore. We will see. The general rule is that you need sequence numbers equals to the summation of the window at the sender plus the window at the receiver. This is just to simplify things. Okay? So in general, you need as many sequence numbers as the size of the window at the sender plus the size of the window at the receiver. This rule applies all times. Okay? So in stop and wait, how much is the size of the window at the sender? 1. The receiver, 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Go back n, it's n, صح? At the sender, and what is the window size for the receiver? 1. So it's n plus 1. Okay? So for selective repeat, the size is n at the sender, the size is m at the receiver. They don't have to be equally sized, by the way. Okay? So in that case, it's n plus m. This is a general rule that applies all the time. Simple, واضحة? Okay? So now because of the fact that I'm trying to really utilize the channel efficiently and not having to retransmit all the segments in the window, because of this, I added another level of complexity. One thing I have to pay attention to now is that I have 5 different categories of segments instead of 4 for the case of go back M. Why? Because here in the window, I have some segments which have been sent but not receiving the acknowledgement for, which is these yellow ones. Okay? And these green ones, these are inside the window and I received the acknowledgement for. Okay? هتقولي if that's the case, why didn't you slide the window? Can I slide the window when I receive these segments? I received the acknowledgement for these segments, but I did not receive the acknowledgement for these segments. All of them have been sent to the receiver. Okay? But I received acknowledgement for these, and I did not receive acknowledgement for these. Can I slide the window?
You can.
I cannot, because if I do this, I may never receive acknowledgement for these, right? And the receiver may never receive these segments خالص. Maybe they have been lost. I don't know. Okay? So I cannot slide the window except if I'm receiving the acknowledgements in order. Okay? If I'm receiving the acknowledgement for the first segment, which is pointed to by the base, I slide the window. But if I receive any other segment, I cannot slide the window. Okay? So that's one level of complication that we didn't have for go back in. What else? Remember, by inside the window, I may have segments that have been received successfully, and some other segments have not been received successfully. So I have to distinguish between these two. So each of these segments in the buffer will have a flag. Is it received, not received, received, not received, received, not received? Okay? So I have to distinguish between the different types inside the window now. I didn't have to do this for go back in, right? Because it's either unacknowledged or acknowledged, and it's in order. It's always in order. But here, it's mixed. So I have to mark. And the third level of complexity, as we said, is each one will have its own timer. واضح? At the receiver side, here, this is the receiver side, okay? At the receiver side now, I have a window بقى, okay, of all the segments that I can accept. Okay? So if I don't receive this segment, but I receive the segment after it, I will accept it. So I'm allowed to receive segments unordered or out of order. Why? Why did I do this? To avoid retransmitting all the window from the sender side. Okay? So I only need to retransmit this one, but not all of them. واضح? So I only need to retransmit, the sender has to retransmit to me this one only. But this one has been accepted, this one has been accepted, this one has been accepted. So they don't have to reprocess these segments again and again and again, which is the case of a go back N. That's the main difference. And as you can see, the worst case scenario is that this window, imagine this window is like this, and this window is like this. واضح? So you have this window and this window. This is the worst case scenario. That's why we need as many sequence number as this window plus this one, right? Because at any point of time, you may have the worst case scenario that you have the window at the sender is stuck, and the window at the receiver is actually moving. Okay? And this happens when if the acknowledgement that the receiver is sending to the sender is delayed for a very, very, very long time. So the receiver keeps sliding the window, sliding the window, sliding the window, accepting everything. Okay? But the acknowledgement يعني لسه راكب يعني عجلة ولسه بياخد وقته. For this situation, the window at the receiver is really slid all the way, and the window at the sender is stuck, not moving. Why? Because I did not receive any acknowledgement. So this is the worst case scenario. That the two windows are virtually concatenated. That's why we need as many sequence number as all the sequence number in both windows. Okay? ماشي كده؟ Okay, so that's the selective repeat. So the selective repeat, if data from the types of the event here did not change, by the way, the types of the event. It's just that the timeout now is a timeout per segment. Okay? Per segment. So data from above, again, request to send. The timeout, which now has to have the sequence number of the segment that fired now. And each one has a separate timer. Okay? And of course, receiving the acknowledgement. So if the timeout happens, I resend this segment only, send one segment only. واضحة دي طبعا. Okay? So this is the main difference. But I don't have to resend everything in the window. Resend one segment only. What about the next one? When the timer fires, I will send it. When the timer fires, I will send it. And I will keep doing this. Okay? And I may receive the acknowledgement before the timer fires up, which means I don't have to do anything. That's good. واضح? At the receiver, packets برضو, they have to follow this window technique. When I receive the window, I will send the acknowledgement. If it's out of order, accept it in the buffer. Okay? There is a very important thing here. Just the fact that you accepted the segment in the buffer. Okay? But remember, we have to do one more thing. We have to deliver this segment to the application at the receiver side, صح? But this is the ultimate objective, is that we are sending these segments from the sender application in order to arrive to the receiver application, okay? So the receiver will have to take back the segment from the buffer and send it to the application layer, right? So just the fact that we accept the segment in the buffer, does that mean that we send this segment also to the application? The answer is no. Why? Unordered delivery to the receiver doesn't necessarily mean unordered delivery to the application. This is very dangerous. Okay? So you can accept the segments unordered at the receiver, but you have to make sure when you deliver it to the application, they are always in order. That's what this tries to say. So delivering the segment to the application layer has to follow the order, must be in order. There is no compromise. Why? Because if it goes to the application unordered, this means that everything is corrupted. Okay? I will accept it in the transport layer buffer. Okay? Why? Again, to optimize the performance of the transport layer protocol. But deliver it when? Only when they are in order. We'll see that live now. تفضل.
Why don't we have another window for the application inside the
ما هو أنت again that what you are saying, that's a good way of thinking, but what you are saying violates the layer isolation. You have to design the transport layer protocol irrespective of what application running above you and what network protocol running underneath you. واضح? Otherwise, if you assume that the application maintains a buffer in order to assume an order delivery, how can you guarantee this? You cannot control the application. Okay? And actually, one of the very viable services of the transport layer protocol is reliability. And reliability assumes that there is in order delivery.
So
Okay.
we don't create a header for the application.
Now?
Let's say we can create a header inside the application.
Yes,
from
but
the application.
yes, but actually there is a header for the application.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you cannot read the application header at the transport layer. That violates the layer isolation, a layered model. You cannot do this. You cannot say, I'll read the application header at the transport layer in order to recognize whether the application has a buffer to order things or not. You cannot do this.
Can't.
Yes, cannot do this. Sometimes it is, sometimes, but even if it's not encrypted, بقولك, it violates the layer isolation. Cannot do this. Okay? So if the packet was received successfully, I send acknowledgement for that particular packet with the sequence number. Otherwise, I should ignore. This means that I may receive a segment, okay, and for some whatever reason, the segment is even outside the window of the receiver. Okay? Which means that many segments have not been received, and the channel is very erroneous, and I lost many segments, and now I'm receiving a segment which is outside the window. لا في الحالة دي I have to reject it. خلاص, I have to ignore it. Okay? So that might also happen. So this is the selective repeat. So here I happen to have many sequence numbers. Remember here the window size here is 4, and the window size at the receiver is also 4. I have a sequence number which is 10, صح? 0 until 9 is 10. So is that fine? Yes, fine. It's fine. Safe side, right? So the number of distinct sequence numbers are more than the size of the window at the sender plus the size of the window at the receiver, which is 8. But I have 10, so أمور طيبة, ما في مشكلة. You will see now the scenario that this condition is not fulfilled, and we'll see how where the problem is. Okay, so the sender will send segment 0, right? And I can send segment 1, ما فيش مشكلة. And segment 2, this is the exact same scenario that happened before. But now remember, we are selective repeat now. We're not go back n. Okay? So we want to highlight the fact that here we don't have to send all the segments in the window anymore when the timeout fires. Here I don't have to do that. Okay? I sent segment 0, sent segment 1, sent segment 2 was lost. That's fine. Keep sending. Send segment 3. All of this, and I did not receive any acknowledgement, so I cannot slide the window here. The window is the same. I cannot slide anything because I did not receive any acknowledgement, right? The timeout happens to be long enough, so I received the acknowledgement for segment 0. So okay, good, slide 1. I received acknowledgement for segment 1. Good, slide. Okay. So here I'm starting at segment 2, which was here, it was lost, right? So I will not receive the acknowledgement for segment 2 because the receiver has not received it. But here, by interestingly speaking, segment 3 here was accepted. Why? Because it's within the window. That's the difference. Even though segment 3 is out of order, I received it, I will mark it as received. Because it's inside the window, I will accept it. But remember, at this point, I'm still did not receive segment 2. And that's why I did not slide the window at the receiver. I cannot do this. واضح? I cannot do this. Okay? So the timer for segment 2 has fired. So this is the main difference. Should I send all the segments in the window? No, I will send only segment 2 only. Okay? So hopefully this time segment 2 will arrive. Of course, the receiver receives segment 2, so there is an interesting scenario that happened here. Okay? The receiver slid more than one segment all at once. Have you noticed this? Okay? So here, the receiver, when it receives segment 2, when it lost segment 2, but received segment 3 and segment 4 and segment 5. I received all of these successfully, right? Then, when I receive segment 2, that segment 2 is like a brick that was lost and now it's in place. Okay? So I can assume that everything is received in order. So I can slide 3 positions all at once. Okay? While I'm sliding the receiver window, I'm delivering things up. So when do you deliver the segments up to the application? When you slide the receiver window. Why? because you cannot slide the receiver window unless they are in order. Okay? So that's the situation where you are completely sure that everything is in order. Now you can deliver it out. واضح? So that's the main. So now we avoided retransmitting all the segments in the window, right? But the cost is there's no free lunch. Remember, yeah. There's no free lunch, right? So what's the cost that we have paid? We had to maintain n different timeouts for each segment. We had to maintain a state for each packet, whether it was received successfully, sent successfully, things like that, right? So all of this we had to pay in order to avoid.
They send a packet that's outside the window, and yet the timer did not time out. So, for example, if
You're stuck. You'll wait. You will wait forever. You will wait for an event, either acknowledgement or timeout. If none of these happened, I'm waiting. Okay. So,
Do I reply acknowledgement even though they are out of my window?
even Mao said that when they are out of order, the receiver will send a positive acknowledgement for the last successfully received segment. صح? We said that. صح?
I mean, let's say that all the acknowledgement after the last line got lost.
Yes.
And I have completely different windows now. One of them is 2, 3, 4, 5. The other one is 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
So
That's the situation. If that happens, again, you are stuck until either a timeout happens or an acknowledgement is received somehow. So that situation will cause a halt that happens at the sender and at the receiver. Until the sender, one of the timeout timers is fired. It will retransmit. So this retransmission might trigger things to happen. This scenario,
when the windows slide completely and all the acknowledgement get lost.
right?
And
The sender did not
has to-
slide, of course, because it did not receive any
So
acknowledgement.
it has to send all the packets. Does the receiver has to reply acknowledgement
Of course,
even though they are not in the
of
window?
course. Whenever the receiver receives a segment, it should send an acknowledgement, except if this segment is out of order, in which case I will reject. In that case, I will also send an acknowledgement, but the acknowledgement for the last successfully received segment. يعني معنى I received segment 2.
In this example, for example.
Yeah, I received segment 0, segment 1, and segment 3.
آخر شيء.
Okay, here, I will accept segment 3, right? Sending the acknowledgement will be for segment 3
صحيح.
because I accepted it. تمام؟ طيب انت what you're saying is that if I receive the segment outside the window ولا ايه؟
أنا قصدي بعد آخر شيء بالضبط all the acknowledgement lost.
Yes. Here, all these acknowledgements have been lost.
Acknowledgement lost. Window they are concatenated now.
Okay.
So
خلاص.
what should I do?
Okay, it's stuck.
Stop بالضبط.
Yes, we'll be in a deadlock. What will break back this deadlock? A timer. The timer for this lost segment will have to fire at some point. Yeah. صح. When it fires, I will send this segment again. Hopefully, when I send this segment again, it will trigger things for the acknowledgement to arrive.
But
If it doesn't arrive, خلاص خلاص.
but the receiver window is past the.
It cannot slide more than this. خلاص. Cannot.
It already slide at the end.
Yes, but it cannot. يعني after some time, it cannot slide more than this. خلاص.
صحيح.
Yes. طيب خلاص. يعني segment 2 was lost. Okay. After some time, I sent segment 2. Segment 2 arrived at the receiver. صح. In order. It will slide.
It will
But after some time, when they are both concatenated, the receiver sent many acknowledgements for these, and nothing
nothing arrived.
arrived. خلاص, so we will have to wait for either an acknowledgement to arrive or a timeout happens. One of them.
Okay, so when the timer times out, I will retransmit. For
Yes.
example, 2, 3, 4, 5.
لا, when the timer of the first one fires, you send the first one. When the timer for the second one fires, you send the second individually.
Individually. But
صح.
the window for the receiver is past 2. Like it's 6 now.
Right.
So do I reply acknowledgement to 2?
برافو عليك. Yes. In that case, you will send the acknowledgement for this particular segment again. Yes.
Okay.
It's a good question. Retransmission for the entire window. So,
In the previous slide.
okay. By the way, is here. So, this scenario now talks about the fact that, let's see, this window, the size is 3, صح? And here the window is 3. So you would think that how many sequence numbers do we need? 6. How many we have now?
6 is.
لا 7 بس. You have 0, 1, 2, 3. Remember the sequence numbers are modulo n. يعني معنى انه 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. صح? So how many different sequence numbers do we have here? 4. صح? Is that acceptable? No. Okay. Why? So let's see. This will touch on the scenario that you just explained now. So I sent packet 0. Okay. The receiver sent acknowledgement 0. For some reason, the backward channel is very erroneous. Okay. So this acknowledgement was a lost or corrupted, or never received. Okay. I sent packet 1. I sent packet 2. However, the receiver receives things successfully. It's just that the acknowledgement on the way back got lost. Okay? When I sent segment 0, I can send the one after it, but I cannot slide. صح? Because I did not receive any acknowledgement. This is the problem. But the receiver on the other side receives things in order, so it can slide. صح? So that's the situation we're talking about. So here I slide 1, 2, 3. And I sent all this acknowledgement, assuming that one of them at least will arrive. Okay? But none of them arrived. So what will happen? That's fine. After some time, the timer will be sent. Let's see about this situation. ركز معايا بقى. Here, I will retransmit. Which timer has fired up? The one for segment 0. So send segment 0. Okay? So the receiver here receives packet 0. This is the question. Will it accept it or not?
The size, it will accept it.
شوف بقى, تعال بقى نشوف. Given the window that we have here, we have 0 here, right? So according to the logic, should we accept it or not? Should accept it. Okay. That's the logic. Okay. But practically, is this correct? No. Why?
Because it will slide even for the.
لا مش بس كده, خد بالك. Remember, this segment 0 and this segment 0, they are different. The content of them is different. خد بالك? Just the fact that they have the same sequence number doesn't mean that they are the same. The content is different. Okay? So we are accepting something here by mistake. Imagine انت دلوقتي جايبه الباكت دي وبتطلعيها للابلكيشن instead of this packet. You see the حجم المشكله. There is a serious problem here. You are corrupting the entire application. You see the situation now? So this should not happen. It should never happen. Okay? That condition happened. Why? Because the number of the sequence numbers that we have are less than the summation of the two windows. Okay? So this condition is not fulfilled in that scenario. That's why we have this situation. واضحة دي؟ The application layer will be totally corrupted because this segment is different from this segment. But we accepted this segment in the position of this segment. Erroneously. This should never happen. This is very serious.
How much should your sequence number be, or your window size be in relation, the relation between the sequence number and the size?
ما هو احنا قلنا اهو a sequence number, the number of different sequences
Right.
should be اهو اوكي هكتب لك الرول بالبونت العريض اهو.
should be n plus
Okay, the sequence numbers should be greater than or equal to window size of the sender plus the window size at the receiver. واضح؟ greater than or equal.
In this case, we need it to be 6 or more.
بالظبط كده. Okay. طبعا if the acknowledgement arrived successfully, this situation will be fine. ما فيش مشكلة خالص. Yes, because this acknowledgement may arrive at the sender, okay, but they are corrupted. How does the sender know that they are corrupted? From the checksum. So they arrive corrupted or they never arrive, okay, for us is the same as if they did not arrive. There's no difference. Okay? Any other questions? تابعين؟ Okay.
دكتور طيب بخصوص regarding the selective repeat
Right.
in the last page still
Okay. طيب خلينا نبريك هنا عشان بس ايه يعني until now we're talking about techniques and concepts. Starting from now we'll talk about how TCP works. Okay? Until now we're talking about basic concepts for reliable data delivery. We did not start discussing any transport layer protocol, any practical transport layer protocol. So the question, for example, is, does TCP use go back and does this TCP use selective repeat? Which one? Okay. How does TCP use the timeout? How does it? Is there any mechanism for how you set the timeout? Okay. Should we wait for a very long, short, things like that? So this is what we need to answer. Okay. Okay. So we'll talk about TCP. What are the main differences that TCP has compared to go back N and selective repeat, and what is the segment structure? Segment structure here we mean the header. What is the header structure? What is the function of each field in the header and so on? And how does TCP perform reliable data transfer? Is it go back N? Is it selective repeat? Is it a mix of both? That's what we need to answer. So first, we need to be aware that, as we said before, TCP is used to facilitate point-to-point transfer between two end applications. The word point-to-point here refers that there is one application end on this side, one application end on this side, and they communicate. So هتقولي يعني was there any other option? Yes. There is the concept of multicast, one-to-many. صح? So the same segment is sent to multiple receivers all at the same time. But that's not what TCP does. TCP cannot be used for one-to-many transfer. خالص. It has to be point-to-point. This is different also from device to device. Remember, in lower layer we talk about device to device. Here, endpoint to endpoint, application to application. This could be on either side of the world. Device to device is like they are communicating together in a small area. But here, one application in Qatar communicates to one application in China, for example. But it has to be one-to-one, point-to-point. ماشي? It supports reliable in order. بس إيه بقى؟ ها؟ Bytes tree. That's one main difference. So we've been talking about sequence number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? TCP doesn't use the sequence number as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, as we said. It uses instead the byte number in the stream. So basically, it tries to simplify the segmentation part. Okay? So you have like a information coming from the application layer. So it starts with byte, let's say byte 3. And I will tell you, it doesn't have to start from 0 also. Byte 3, 4, 5. These are bytes, huh? Bytes, okay? So the sequence number is the byte index or the byte sequence in the whole unit. So for segment 1, the sequence number is 3. For segment 2, the sequence number might be 1003. The sequence number for the segment after that could be 2003. Okay? This means that the segment size is 1000 bytes. Okay? So the sequence number is not an increment anymore. ماشي كده? So that's one basic difference. It works at the byte level. ماشي? That's not a major difference. We can deal with that. There's no issue here. But the increment here is per the segment size. So I have to increase 1000 bytes at a time. Which means that no message boundaries. يعني إيه الكلام ده؟ يعني last segment could be 10,003, right? And it could have a size which is less than 1,000. That's why there is a concept of maximum segment size. So typically, مثلا, if I have an application level data, which is, let's say, it's 540 bytes. Okay, the maximum segment size is 100. Okay, so we'll start. We'll start from 5 this time. I'm trying to tell you that the start byte sequence is not significant. You can start from anywhere. Okay, so the first segment size will have a sequence number of 5. The one after this, 105, 205, and each of these one will have a maximum segment size of 100. What about the last one? We'll start from
505.
4 will start from 405, okay, and it will end at 445 because صح كده؟ Because the total is 540 صح؟ مظبوط؟ When I tell you the maximum segment size is 100, okay, this is the maximum segment size, but it could be less than this.
I have a question. Why don't we go to 505 and then stop at 545? Or 540?
And this is the last segment. The last segment. 500. Okay, yeah, 500. 505, yes, and 500. Yes, 500. Sorry, معلش صح. You're right. 545. Yes. صح كده مظبوط كلامك. صحيح.
Should be 35 or 45?
لا هو actually 44.
Okay. You're 4 by 4?
Yeah. لا هو لا. هو it starts from 505 until 545. Okay? The number of bytes in that case will be 40. The number of bytes in that case will be 40. Because we start from 0 to 39. How many bytes? 40 صح؟
صح.
فthat's the same.
Makes sense.
Anyway يعني مش مشكلة كبيرة يعني. What I'm trying to say is that the segment size has no boundaries. It might be 100, it might start from 5, end at 45, okay? The size of one segment could be 100 or could be equal to the maximum segment size. It could be less than the maximum sequence size. So it may have no boundaries, ماشي? But the sequence number is the byte index at the beginning of that segment. That's it. It uses pipelined protocol or it uses pipeline technique. طب is it go back in ولا selective repeat? Ironically بقى, there is no specification in the standard. Okay? So whether it uses accumulative acknowledgement or it uses individual acknowledgement or if it uses مثلا individual timers or it uses one timer per window, okay? You can possibly use any or use a combination of both. Yeah, there's no specification, and that's why there are multiple variations here. If you look, the TCP is defined in multiple RFCs, requests for comments, which means that the standard has many variations and some updates. Okay, so if you implement any of these RFCs, you comply with the standard. You still comply. So the differences between RFCs, by the way, does not affect on the compliance to the standard. Okay? So you can implement any one of them and still claim that you're using TCP. And these are designed in such a way that if you implement it using any of these RFCs, you can talk to another TCP that uses any other RFC from this list. Which means that any two end applications, they can talk using slight variations in the implementation of TCP. And they still comply with the standard. So which is يعني برضه something ironic شوية يعني. So طبعا احنا عارفين ان يعني let's just let me just one thing we should also oops وراحت فين one thing we should also notice here is that TCP is full duplex, and what that means is, we said that we always talk about the scenario that the sender is sender and the receiver is a receiver.
This could be the receiver.
Yes, practically, in real life, the sender is actually a receiver and the receiver is actually a sender. Which means technically that while the receiver is sending an acknowledgement, it can send data overlaid in the acknowledgement. يعني send data and acknowledge data and so on. So it's full duplex. Okay? We'll see how this is done. ماشي? And also TCP of course uses flow control. We did not talk about flow control until now. We'll talk about how TCP performs flow control. And again, we said that the difference between flow control and congestion control is that flow control is designed to avoid overwhelming the receiver. بينما congestion control to avoid overwhelming the network. This is the main difference. طيب, this is the segment structure for TCP. And as we said, the minimum that we have is a source port and destination port. TCP has it, UDP has it, every transport layer protocol should have it. Okay? طيب. Now, we have a sequence number, as we said, sequence number follows the byte count. Okay? So it's not 0, 1, 2, 3 anymore. So it's the byte count. ماشي? طيب. And as we said, because it's full duplex, you can have a sequence number and acknowledgement number in the same segment, which means that I'm sending you a segment, and by the way, I'm also acknowledging a segment that I received from you. This is to facilitate full duplex. واضح؟ So I'm sending you new data, and by the way, I'm also acknowledging the fact that I received data from you. Okay? ففي تداخل هنا يعني. But does that mean that every single segment I send you should have an acknowledgement? Not necessarily, صح? صح? I could send you, I did not receive from you anything, but I want to send you something, right? Which means that this acknowledgement number in some cases might be blank. Okay? So how would I know that this is blank or not? There is a field here. These are flags. These are 0, 1 flags. This A stands for a acknowledgement. So if this flag is 1, the acknowledgement has a very significant number in that case. This means that this segment contains an acknowledgement. If this flag is 0, this field has no meaning. واضح كده؟ سهلة يعني. So all of this is just to facilitate موضوع الايه؟ الفول دوبلكس. Okay? طيب. So until now, so far so good. There is a very interesting field here, header length. Header length. And from the name, it's the length of the header. Okay? The question is, if the header is fixed size, do I need to have a header length? Why?
Corrupted packets.
No? Corrupted معناها the whole thing is corrupted.
To distinguish from packets that are not supposed to be sent, or segments that are not supposed to be sent using this protocol method. Maybe.
No. If that's the case, then this is incompatible protocol. So in that case, I should not communicate with you. This means that you are speaking Chinese and I'm speaking English. We cannot communicate. خلاص. We talk different protocols. So the first thing that we should check is whether we're using the same protocol, because if not, we should not communicate أصلا. For me, your conversation is corrupted. Okay? So generally speaking, if the header has fixed size, I should not communicate any header length. So the fact that we have a header length here indicates to you that the header has variable size. Why? عشان الoptions. These options have been added in the standard, ironically, to provide some extra information in the header. Okay? Interestingly speaking, this options fields is never used.
For the future or what?
Never, for everything. Okay? They put this options ليه؟ يقول لك عشان ايه future extension of the protocol. Okay? And it ends up that in the future we need another protocol altogether. So we have to design another protocol, which means that they put this options fields for no reason. Okay? This tells you that the standard developers, by the way, they are human beings. They can make mistakes, or they can project something that never happens.
But the whole board is stuck to this.
The whole world is stuck to this. So you can imagine حجم الانفluence. You design something which has unnecessary fields and you enforce it to be used worldwide. Not only this, شوف, options fields is never used, which means that this header length should not be used أصلا. Okay? And not only this, but in the standard there is more interesting things. This is called urgent flag, which means that there is an urgent segment which is coming now from the network layer, which needs to be processed right away. Never used. See? Generally not used. This is called push flag. Push flag is slightly different from urgent flag. Push flag, which means that if data arrives out of order at the receiver, we should not deliver it up. If it has a push flag, we push it up. Priority. Okay? Never used. It ends up never used. There was very specific use for it in experimental setting, but practically they found no use for it. That's very interesting. Okay? The rest of these flags, including reset, send, and fin, these are used for what? for handshake, for connection establishment. These are used for connection establishment. We'll talk about this. Because we said that TCP is connection oriented, صح? So you have to establish a connection between the sender and receiver before you start transmitting anything. And that's why you assume that there is order delivery. Order delivery. This is part of reliability. واضح? So we have to maintain this order delivery. Okay? طيب, this receive window is where we use flow control. So the receiver should always communicate, خد بالك, this is the maximum buffer I have. Huh? Do not send me more than this. I cannot absorb information you're sending me if it's more than this window. So this is used for flow control. We'll see that in the future. We'll talk about this in details. Okay? But urgent pointer is associated with this urgent. Never used. We don't use it for anything. Which means that this is overhead, this is overhead, this is not used, this is not used. Yes. على الأقل استخدم التشيكسم. Yes. تشيكسم مستخدم طبعا. فين التشيكسم صحيح؟ yeah, here. التشيكسم طبعا لا التشيكسم ده مهم جدا. حتى UDP uses checksum for checking errors يعني. ماشي كده؟ So that's the structure. So here, as you can see here, the sequence number بقى is not 0, 1, 2, 3 anymore. Okay? It can start from anything. And remember, the sequence number from the sender starts at byte count 42, right? And we are sending data of 1 character, which means that the segment size or the maximum segment size is just 1 character. So supposedly, the next one here should be 43. That's why. Okay? But the question is, what is the relationship between this sequence number and the sequence number coming from the receiver, which is this one? Is there any correlation? No. So, sender starts from anywhere, receiver starts from anywhere. There's no correlation. مفيش أي علاقة أصلا. ماشي? But this sequence number has very strong relationship with the acknowledgement number coming from the receiver. صح? This makes sense. معايا ولا لا? So the sequence number here is 42. Okay? The acknowledgement here is 43. And what that means is I received all the bytes up to 42 correctly. Please send me 43. That's what it means. So the acknowledgement number always points to to the expected one next. واضحة كده؟ So that's how it works. That's how TCP works. ماشي كده؟ That's it. The question now, how receiver handles out of order segments? TCP specifications does not specify. That's very interesting. يعني should we use window at the receiver? Should we accommodate out of order? ولا لا؟ اعمل اللي انت عايزه. ما فيش أي specification في الستاندرد. Which means that you can do either and you can still comply. تفضل. Which means that there are some variations in assignment 3, I think. We will study the different variations of TCP in terms of congestion control. Because حتى TCP uses different congestion control techniques and different variations of TCP implementation, they use different congestion control. تفضل. Out of order delivery at the receiver, yes.
Yeah. So, meaning that whatever I will specify in X, Y protocol, all of them can be considered as TCP, or does it mean that I have to use TCP, but then I'm doing something?
I understand your question is that how does two applications deal with the different variations of TCP implementation?
Yes.
Right. So by experiments, if one of them uses, for example, selective repeat, and the other one uses go back N, right? You can say that go back N is a special case of selective repeat when the window size of the receiver is 1. صح? So if, for example, one of them uses selective repeat and one of them uses go back n, okay? It doesn't matter because they will resort to using both go back n, something like that, okay? So in that case, the receiver, which is, each one of them is a receiver, صح? So they will resort to using window size at the receiver of one. And that will solve everything. That's a very nice question. Okay? TCP round trip time and timeout. This is very, very يعني, crucial design parameter. Why? Because if the timeout, well, you can think of the timeout as a function of the time that the segment is sent all the way to the receiver, and the acknowledgement is sent from the receiver all the way to the sender, صح? Which is what we call round trip time, right? So the timer is function of the round trip time. Of course, it's not exactly equal to the round trip time because we have to wait for some factor of safety, صح? So you can imagine that the timeout should be correlated to the round trip time plus something, صح كده؟ منطقيا يعني. The bad news is this round trip time is not fixed. This is very bad news. Why? Because of so many factors. يعني احنا بنتكلم على one end application in Qatar, one end application in China. Between them, there are thousands of routers. Can you imagine the round trip time is fixed? Can you imagine the round trip time is function of how many factors that might happen? Whether there are some routers down, whether there are traffic loads or not, whether there are some router queues are congested, traffic loops, packet loops, things like that. So there are inherent dynamics in the network. So our round trip time can never be fixed. So how can we adjust the timeout based on something that's not fixed? Okay? That's this is an advanced way of how you think about it. But initially, before reinforcement learning, TCP was designed. You have to have some way. So the method that TCP uses as a standard is to try to estimate round trip time. Because round trip time changes, so it must follow certain distribution. Right? So it has certain statistical distribution. Okay? So since it follows certain statistical distribution, it varies up and down, goes up and down, up and down. Okay? So I should design timeout based on something that changes. So basically what TCP tries to do is that it tries to estimate the average and the standard deviation of that statistical distribution. Okay? And it tries to design the timeout based on a combination of the average plus the standard deviation. That's in a nutshell. إزاي بقى? So it samples the round trip time. The sender can easily measure one instantaneous round trip time. صح? I can measure that. I send the packet, I receive the acknowledgement, I can calculate this time, صح? Easily. Okay? But this is instantaneous, and after this might change. Okay? But I can estimate the average. Okay? Estimate the average using very common concept. الناس بتوع electric engineering يعرفوا برضه filtering technique. في filtering technique مشهور جدا اللي هو moving average. It's called exponential moving average. This is a very simple and very powerful technique for estimating anything that varies. Okay? So we'll see how this is done. So we can measure sample round trip time. From this sample round trip time, we measure sort of a moving average of how this round trip time changes. Okay? That will account for the average part. But this sample round trip time is different from the instantaneous. There is a big difference. That gives you some indication about the standard deviation or the difference between the average and the instantaneous value. That also might go up and down. Okay? You will try to estimate the standard deviation also using a similar concept. And then the timeout is a combination of the two. Again, you don't have to follow what I just said. We'll see how this is done systematically, step by step. Sorry? 7:15. اوكي فاضل دقيقتين خلينا ننتهز فرصة اللي أنا عندي لسه فاضل دقيقتين اوكي عشان بس نكمل الموضوع على بعض يعني. ف basically I can calculate the estimated round trip time at time 0. This is called this is equal to what? The sample round trip time at time 0. I have one sample round trip time, so the estimated one equal to this. What is the estimated round trip time of time 1? From this equation back, it's 1 minus alpha times the estimated round trip time at time 0, which is this, which is the historical value, the previous value, plus alpha times the sample round trip time at time 1. Okay? What is the estimated round trip time at time 2? Again, 1 minus alpha times estimated round trip time at time 1 plus alpha times the sample round trip time at time 2. Okay? And what I'm essentially doing here is that over time, you see, what is this estimated round trip time? It's actually 1 minus alpha times the estimated round trip time at time 0 plus something, صح? So you see 1 minus alpha, 1 minus alpha. So over time, what I'm essentially doing here is that I'm reducing the dependency on the historical values, okay? And I'm increasing the dependency on the sample value, okay? This is the technique that we call a exponential moving average technique. Okay? Alpha here is fixed. هو الستاندرد بقى شوفي الستاندرد is not defined. قلنا يعني الستاندرد ما فيش ولا options ولا urgent فيه بس it defines الالفا بقى. defines الالفا equals 0.125. ده fixed بقى في الستاندرد. Okay? So that's the main result. The result is this is the instantaneous values. You see the variation goes up and down very rapidly. But this is the exponential moving average. It's smooth. Okay? Is this the round trip time? No. The round trip time is different from the estimated round trip time. As we said, the round trip time is function of the moving average and the standard deviation. The standard deviation is the difference between this moving average and the instantaneous. This difference also goes up and down. Okay? So to do this, we estimate the moving average, but now we set the deviation of the round trip time, which is the difference between the sample and the estimated, and this is a absolute value. We take the absolute value, whether it goes above or below, we just need to estimate the difference between them. Okay? And again, we use the exponential moving average for that deviation. Using برضو البيتا بقى مش الالفا. البيتا هنا 0.25. برضو this is specified in the standard. Okay? And then this is by the timeout. So the timeout is the estimated round trip plus 4 of the deviation or the standard deviation of the round trip time. طيب هتقولي بقى ايه؟ Why اصلا الالفا is 0.125? Why the beta is 0.25? Why 4? Why not 3? مفيش حد عنده إجابة الموضوع ده. يعني this is done empirically بقى. This is something empirical. It exists in the standard and it has been estimated empirically. So these parameters are, again, I mean, these parameters can be adjusted using reinforcement learning. And this is one of the ways of adjusting all these parameters. These are called hyperparameters. So we can control that timeout and these parameters using some intelligence. The intelligence will help you to predict the future values of this round trip time and hence adjust the timeout accordingly. Why are we doing all of this? Because if we set the timeout to something too short, we'll end up retransmitting a lot unnecessarily, صح? And if we set it to something very long, we'll wait forever for an acknowledgement, right? And hence we're not utilizing the channel efficiently. We miss many opportunities for transmission. So there is a huge trade-off that we are trying to achieve here. Huge trade-off. واضح كده؟
Can build an estimator.
Yes, ما هو الاستيميتر هو الاستيميتر. You can use many techniques, by the way, to build an estimator like this. You can use many filtering techniques. ماشي؟ بس هو الستاندرد uses this. ماشي كده؟ هنقف هنا عشان sorry to take يعني